Vacation Rental Machine helps hosts just like you learn how to start, grow, and scale your short-term rental business. This show is all about creating systems that help you automate your business, giving you more time and money freedom. If you're ready to start living the vacation rental life, then subscribe to this podcast today. Come and join us on our Facebook group, The Host Nation, where we'll be talking about starting, automating, and scaling a short-term rental business. Now, on to the show. Hey, welcome back, Host Nation, to another episode of Vacation Rental Machine. In this episode, we are moving on. We've moved on from step one, which was our framework, where we were covering the foundation for your vacation rental machine. Now we're moving on to some of the more exciting stuff. We're getting into step two, which is all about your market research. So, John, do you mind taking this episode and rolling it with it? We're talking about the criteria for a good market to invest in for your vacation rental machine.
Oh yeah. So this step two is the excitement of a lot of things. So one, I'm really excited to talk about it with everybody. And I want to talk about where the best place is to start. This is for the people that don't have a unit. They're looking or think they might want to do something in their own home. So this is your section, right? So first, the easy answer to this question is you should probably do this in your backyard. Not literally your backyard where you live at, but a place that you're very familiar with, that you already know what the draw is. For instance, if I live in Las Vegas, I know that the draw is Vegas. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Okay, that side you probably don't want to cater to because you might be running a brothel or something like that, but that's not great. But what you do want to do is focus on the convention travelers that come in. And they come for these conventions like VMware and whatever other stuff that's out there. I'm a tech guy, so I can name Oracle and all that stuff like that. But they're there for a reason, and they stay for a good length of time. So in that length of time, you can capture those people, and they might need to stay in the same place. So now you could sleep 4 to 6 or whatever people in your one listing. That might be a big draw. So you need to identify what your draw is locally for your travelers. I mean, it could be a few different categories, and we'll talk about the categories, but just to label them, there's normally a business category, there's an adventure category, and there's family. Identify which category your local market fits into. And that is normally your traveler that you're going to cater to.
Now, I think this is also really important to look back at step one being the framework, because how you're going to be structuring your unit is also going to be dependent on the type of market that you're going into. So you might think like, oh, well, I wanted to do an adventure category, or I wanted to have like an adventure type unit. I'm very active, but that might not work out in Vegas, unless there's specific locations in Vegas where you can do that. It might not really fit your brand being the type of category for the market that you're going to be moving into.
Definitely. So let's talk about the categories. Let's break down a business category. So one thing about business, we know business travelers come in from the airport. So if your location is within a 20-mile radius, maybe a 30-mile radius of the airport, you're a prime spot for business travelers, and you're probably close to a big city where they need to be anyway. Outside of that, let's think about traveling nurses and just people that go to hospitals day in and day out. If you're near a great hospital that has great care, people come in to get great care for whatever issues they have to deal with. So those travelers are coming. They might need to stay longer. This might mean that you need to look at a place that's on the first level, that doesn't have too many steps, stuff like that, because they might be receiving outpatient treatment but need to be close to the hospital to get that treatment. So look at all those things. Convention centers, that means business travelers are coming to learn something. They're coming to show some stuff off. So you're probably going to need some parking. You're probably going to need to be close to there. So that's also a good identifier of a business traveler. You got your adventure places, let's just say the Poconos or something like that, right? Maybe Deep Creek in Maryland. It's a big draw because it's a big lake. It's the largest body of water in Maryland. So they have a winter season because it snows a lot. So you can ski. Outside of that, there's the lake. So if you really want to go for that adventure, you go there for that. this is not the place for a business traveler. There's probably not much business that goes on outside of people renting for adventure. So that's probably not the best place to kind of set up a place just catering all towards your business guest. But it probably is a good place to incorporate some families because, yeah, I'm a guy, I like to go out and go fishing on the lake, but you know, when a guy gets older, he normally has a family or a few other people that he's got to bring along with him. So you probably should cater to those guests. Some of your other big family locations would be Orlando, Florida, probably the hotel capital of the US. But what they probably lack in is a space where they could have multiple bedrooms for a large family to come stay together and then go out to the park. You also have a good mix in a place like that too, where you might be able to grab a little bit of business, but your focus really should probably be families, just because that's who goes there the most.
And when it comes to the type of market that you're going to be catering towards, this is going to be very drastically with the type of accommodations that you're going to have with that. So with a family unit, you're going to be housing probably a whole house, and that could be a little bit more expensive. So maybe that is not a market that you maybe want to go into. You're also going to have to accommodate them because maybe they're staying for longer periods of time. Maybe they're going to be there for a couple weeks, so they might need a lot more cooking utensils. They might need accommodations for like children. You might need cribs. You might need kid toys. You might need games. So just remember that the type of market that you're going to be going into, you're going to have to cater your brand, your niche into that market. So John, why wouldn't I want to go to maybe one of these real happening areas like, Miami or Orlando, where there obviously is a lot of tourism, a lot of reason for people to go there. I live in a place that isn't maybe the most popular area, and maybe not a whole lot of people come to my town. So why wouldn't I look at other places?
Great question. The reason why I suggest doing it in your backyard is because you'll be more in tune to the day-to-day things that go on with your rental and your guest needs. And you'll know almost immediately how to resolve them because you're very familiar with the area, one. Two, when you have an area that's far, far away from you, where you're not able to drive to it within, about 40 minutes or so, you then have to think about logistics of stuff. What happens when you have a guest that comes and, like I said before, they need that blanket? Well, if you're not in a location that has Prime Now, maybe it's past the time, what do you do? Those things and stuff that you'll learn from just having it in your backyard will help you template better when you go and move out to a different market. If you already have a property somewhere else, like Miami, it's a great market, 100%. Those guests are going to demand different things in general. You're going to need somebody that's on the ground to kind of help deal with those break fix scenarios. And of course, we're trying to put this whole thing together to try to help people to figure out what they need to kind of do so they're not doing too much of that. But again, I'm not perfect. I don't know your market. There might be something that's needed that I would never think of. I mean, if you're by the water, somebody might ask you for a life vest. If you have a pool, none of my properties have a pool. I don't think about that stuff. So you kind of got to think about just how to service your guests. And that's kind of why I'm suggesting your backyard first is let's get the hospitality part down first. Remember, I said, if you don't have good hospitality skills, this is not the business for you. So this is one of those suggestions is get the hospitality down first, and then you're able to take that and duplicate it in multiple markets.
And I think one of the cool things about short-term rentals, vacation rentals, is that you can do this really, like John was saying, in your backyard. We had a guest on the Short-Term Rental Success Stories podcast, Amlan Mitra, who he is in a really small town. There's probably 50,000 people in this little town that he lives in. But he is the transition point between I believe it was the Mississippi area and New Orleans. So he's in this location where there's going to be travelers that are trying to get to New Orleans, and he just happens to be at this one spot where that people want to stay because it's going to be cheaper there. maybe they have a long drive and they just need some place to rest for the night, and this is going to be the closest place to them. So he has catered his whole business to travelers that are trying to get to a specific location. So this is kind of one of those things where it's like you work with what you have, and then if there's nothing there, like if the regulations say you're not allowed to do that, or if something else comes up, like then maybe it's time to maybe start going a little bit farther out of your immediate area. But when you're just starting out, the easiest thing, like John was saying, is knowing you're going to know your market, you're going to know your backyard, and that's going to be easier to resolve issues when you're first starting off, and just getting comfortable, so that way you do know how to take those systems and then apply it to a different area, and it should be a lot easier. And going off of being in your backyard, if you are in a rural area and you're feeling like, there's just nobody that wants to stay here, just know that there is also statistics that have come out from Airbnb that in specific locations, there are people that are trying to go to the more rural locations to just learn about that area. There's actually been a 74% growth increase in rural areas in like the small areas of North Carolina as compared to the more metropolitan areas, where that growth hasn't really increased dramatically, but the increase of rural areas has just skyrocketed, and there's a lack of hotel accommodations in those areas. So this is a prime place for short-term rental operators, vacation rental operators, to be able to really kind of get into that niche and fulfill a need for stays that is just not available, because hotels are not looking at those locations like that crossover between New Orleans and Mississippi. All the hotels are looking at New Orleans or the city of Mississippi, but they're not looking for that in between. Same thing with those rural areas.
Definitely 100% a great fact. Me just living in the city, sometimes I just want to just get away, and I'm looking on the map and I'm like, you know what? There's some mountains out there in Virginia. I'm going to go out there and I'm just going to just stay for a couple of days, watch the birds. So great fact. And I love going to rural areas myself. Let's talk about how to identify your market and the tools that you'll need to kind of get familiar with and use just to pick out those places that we named. And first one is, of course, Google. You're going to need Google. You're going to need Google Maps. You're going to need to look at them and just want to identify those places of interest for that specific traveler. Outside of that, I always take a look at what they call walk score, and you can do that at walkscore.com. That gives you a number on walkability. This really only works for places that are like in the city. If you're in a rural area, this is not going to work for you, especially if you're far away from stuff. But don't worry, it's not a big thing. Outside of that, you want to look at some market data. You can either do that with Airbnb by doing some digging, or there's a company and program that you could use called AirDNA. They have some data that's ready for you. You just have to pay for the specific zip code, and that helps get you a lot of information up front. One thing to also Google and just familiarize yourself with is short-term rental ordinances in the city that you are looking at. You want to know what the rules are so you know how to play. Always play by the rules.
So I hope you all have a better understanding of the type of market research that you will have to be looking at. Again, this is very general, but businesses, adventure, families, these are kind of the locations that you're going to be looking in mind. We're actually going to be doing a live case study. So we're going to have John and I, we're going to be looking into a market that you guys in the host nation recommend to us. So we're going to be putting a poll up in there. Just let us know which location that you would like us to identify. Maybe there's an area that you're looking to invest in, and we'll look at that location, and we're going to do a live breakdown case study of identifying the market and finding out if this would be a good place to invest. So hope you hosts enjoy this episode, and until next time, host nation, keep on hosting. Hope you hosts found value in this episode. If you did, please go on over to iTunes and leave us a review, as that would greatly support the show. If you'd like to connect with John, the community, and I, then go on over to our Facebook group, The Host Nation. Talk to you hosts in the next episode. Keep on hosting.